Hey everybody, I'm Danny Baker with Marshall Goldman, and today we're going to talk about leasing versus buying. There's a lot of common misconceptions with leasing versus buying, and leasing cars, especially exotic and luxury cars like these, is something very, very common in our business. So I want to set the record straight and kind of educate you on a lot of the facts about leasing versus buying. I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not authorized to give legal or tax advice. So before you make any final purchasing decisions, please seek out counsel from a proper accountant or CPA to make sure that you understand the laws in your state. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is when we talk about leasing versus buying, and leasing specifically with exotic cars like these two Ferraris we have here, we're mainly talking about open-ended leasing. What does that mean, open-ended leasing? Well, it's quite different than leasing a new BMW 3 Series, for example. You see these advertisements on magazines and online where BMW will offer a subsidized lease special, okay? And they'll market a payment often $299 a month, $499 a month, something like that. Those are highly subsidized manufacturer leases, and often they're closed-end. So what that means is the manufacturer is basically responsible for the residual value of the car. Say you buy the car, you make all your payments, say the mileage limit is 12,000 miles per year. You drive your 12,000 miles per year, and at the end of the lease term, after doing everything you promised to do on the lease contract, you literally hand the car back to BMW and you walk away. It's quite different from the type of leasing that we do here. We do open-ended leases, okay? And one of the biggest differences is you, the owner of the car, and the person who's signed that lease is responsible for the residual value on the car. With the Ferrari or an exotic car lease, you are responsible. You own it. If the car's worth $40,000 at the end of the lease and your payoff is $70,000, well, then you've got some negative equity to deal with. But in the case where the car might be worth $105,000 at the end of the lease and you owe $70,000, well, you've got $35,000 in positive equity. Open-ended leases typically work like this. The terms are usually structured around 60 months with somewhere around a 10% down payment. Now, we can do that 20, 30, 40, 50%. Sometimes it's more based on credit. The lender requires us to take a larger down payment based on credit approval, or sometimes even less. I've seen leases done with as little as no money out of pocket. But mileage is not a real big factor. So you look at these open-ended leases, very different from a BMW lease where they might lease you the car at a different payment based on 8,000 miles driven per year or 12,000 or even 15,000. When you talk about a lease on an open-ended lease like a Ferrari, there might not even be a mileage limit. And the reason why is if you drive the car 12,000 miles per year, every year for 3 years, that's going to be make the car worth a lot less than if, say, you drove 2,000 miles per year. Mileage affects the value of the car, which affects how much positive or negative equity you have at the end of the lease, which again, you're responsible for. Okay, so by now you're probably thinking to yourself, well, if I'm responsible for the car and I own it, and I'm responsible for the residual value, then why lease? Why not just, finance the car and make payments over 72 months or 36 months or 48? Well, there's a good reason, and it's highly dependent on where you live as to whether or not it's beneficial for you. So leasing in many states is taxed differently than if you would finance or purchase a car outright for cash. So for example, in some states, if you lease a car, you pay all the tax up front, sales tax that is, just like if you purchased the car or wrote a check or financed it. However, in some states, like the state of Missouri or the state of California, you pay tax by the month. So for example, if you lived in the state of California and bought this 2014 SLS Black Series for $400,000, you'd have to write a check at registration for roughly 8, 9, 10% of the value of the car as your sales tax, which would be due right up front. Alternatively, if you lease that SLS Black Series, you would pay tax on the down payment up front and then tax on the monthly payment for every month during the lease. If you had the car for 6 months, you pay 6 months worth of tax. If you had it for 36 months, you pay 36 months worth of tax. So sometimes leasing a car can help you pay a lot less money in sales tax, especially if you don't plan to own the car for a long time. So you can kind of think about leasing on an exotic car as balloon payment financing. So you're making payments on a chunk of the depreciation on the car over a certain period of time. Depending on how your business is structured or your personal income, you might be able to actually write that payment off as a business expense if you use your car for promotional reasons or entertaining clients or something like that, and use pre-tax money to make that payment, which could save you a lot of money. We're professionals here at Marshall Goldman. We've seen just about every deal you could ever imagine, and we can't necessarily give you advice on what you should do in your situation, but we can certainly present you with options. Now let's get to the fun part of this conversation about leasing. What can I lease? What cars lease better than others, and how do I lease a Ferrari F430 Scuderia for as little money per month? Everybody's got a different goal, and we respect that. And it is very true that some cars lease much, much better than others. But just think about it with common sense. If you have a car that's $400,000 in value, and over 3 years you think it's going to lose $200,000, that's going to cost you a lot more money on a monthly lease payment than, say, a $400,000 car that loses 50 grand in value over 3 years, okay? Again, when we're talking about leasing on exotic cars, building positive equity in your car is actually a really good thing. You can take that positive equity and roll it into the next car as your down payment, or you can choose at the end of the lease to sell the car and take that cash and put it back in your pocket, or you can just pay off the remaining balance and own the car free and clear. All right, back to the fun part of what cars lease well. Specifically, a car like this, a 2017 Porsche Turbo S Cab, this car was about $230,000 brand new. Now at Marshall Goldman, we've got it priced at $179,900 for a car that's only about a year and a half old. That's a $50,000 depreciation in a year and a half. That's a big chunk of money, okay? So when you go to look at leasing on a car like this, it's already depreciated a lot, and it's good chance it's going to start to plateau, or at least the depreciation curve is going to flatten out as time goes on. This is a good example of a car that will lease well because you're not paying for that initial $50,000 in depreciation chunk that the first owner of the car probably had to eat. Another great car that leases well is this Ferrari 599. Okay, this is a car that is completely plateaued in value. This was a car that was about $350,000 new, and you can buy it today for somewhere around $150,000. It's probably not going to lose a whole lot more money over, say, the next 3 or even 5 years, and I'm going to guess you're not going to put a lot of miles on it, which will help the value stay stable even more. A car like this is a really good car to lease because the residual values are fairly aggressive. And the companies that put the residual values on these cars, which our leases are based on, feel very confidently that this is a car that's going to hold value well, and they'll be in a good, positive collateral position throughout the lease, so they're going to have a more aggressive residual value on the car, okay? Again, we're professionals with this at Marshall Goldman. We're happy to advise you through what cars we think lease well and what cars don't, strictly our opinions. But if you check out our email list, we run a weekly email list that spotlights inventory. We've started to put lease quotes on those emails. So if you go to our website, marshallgoldman.com, sign up for our newsletter, just know that you'll get some great lease deals and specials delivered to your email inbox every week. By now your head might be spinning. Let's help you clear it out and make sense of this stuff. Hit us up in the comments. We'll answer your questions as best we can. Feel free to DM us or even call or email us. My contact information is on our website, marshallgoldman.com. I'm Danny Baker. You can reach out to me anytime. Thank you for watching.